shoes off.
Right, me first?
You first.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Alan. Thank you.
Is that us? Yeah? Yeah, you want us to stand?
Hello and welcome to the Not the Old Firm YouTube channel. My name is Ben Banks. That moment you just seen there was the moment where Hearts became the biggest fan-owned club in the UK this week. A historic journey that started in 2014 when Anne Budge saved Hearts from administration. I don't even know if turmoil is the right word. Just such a journey for Hearts over the last few years since the days of Vladimir Romanov. There have been relegations to the Championship, they've had a pandemic to deal with. The fans have clubbed together, raising millions in club funds to get to this point where the foundation of Hearts are now the majority shareholders of the Tynecastle club, and the fans, supporters in Gorgate have control of their club. The future of Hearts is in safe hands, the supporters' hands. So it's been a really historic week for Hearts, and we were there on Monday as this became official. You won't hear much from me on this video, but one thing I would ask is that you do subscribe to our channel. It would be much appreciated so we can continue bringing you videos like this. A pretty lengthy one, I think. As I said, you won't hear much from me. We'll leave full interviews with Hearts chairwoman Anne Budge. We've got Hearts Chief Executive Andrew Mckinley and Chairman of the Foundation of Hearts Stewart Wallace as well, all to come on this video, and we'll go through them in that order as the deal, the handover of shares, if you will, to make the Foundation of Hearts the majority shareholders became official this week. So we'll waste no time going into it. The likes of Anne Budge, Andrew Mckinley, Stewart Wallace can explain the situation a lot better than me. So without any further ado, here's Anne Budge's take on the takeover this week, the future of Hearts, her legacy, what's to come, a bit of everything involved in this.
It feels terrific because it means we've achieved everything we set out to achieve, and despite the doubts that were expressed as to whether this could be done. So no, I'm delighted today.
You've used the word doubts. How confident are you then today?
Me, I'm very confident because, let's face it, the last 7 years we've had a few difficulties to deal with, and we've come through it, and the supporters have backed us every step of the way, and we're in great shape. So it's a perfect time for this transition to happen. We're in the club is in a good place, financially stable, great management team, great board, etc., etc. So it's all good. Oh, good.
How does the arrangement affect the day-to-day running then of the club, and how much of a say then would fans have?
On a day-to-day basis, I think we've said all the way through this, the club continues to be run by the executive team, and the board continues to set the strategy. There are the four issues that the fans will always be able to have a say on. You know, we can't sell the shares, we can't move from Tynecastle, we can't change the club colours, can't change the name, etc., etc. So these are the things that can be influenced by the supporters, and the whole idea is to protect us from things going badly wrong in the future.
It's a big day for the club, so what message does today send to the fans?
I think keep going, keep believing. We are in a really good place, and we are set to get even better. We've got good plans, but we need them to continue to support the club in order to achieve these. So onwards and upwards.
What about your own situation? Obviously in the short term things will remain the same. Do you envisage yourself staying in it for the long term?
Well, it depends on what you mean by long term. At my age, that's maybe not too long, but no, I have committed to stay for a minimum of 2 years if I'm still able to contribute, and if the fans want me, then it could be longer, but I'll certainly be here for the next.
Take it you still have the appetite for it, you're still enjoying it?
I'm enjoying it enormously, yes. And this is a nice space, so again, you know, I just want us to keep moving forward and get stronger.
How hard were these plans to press ahead with? I mean, you probably thought you just got over the worst of it, and then the pandemic comes, and I can imagine that probably...
Yes, it's put everything back at least a year. We would have been doing this last year, but for the pandemic and everything that brought with it. So yes, it's really, as I say, it's about making sure that you keep telling the fans, you know, don't worry, it is going to happen, but we're in the middle of a pandemic.
Was there ever a point during that where you started to maybe worry a wee bit, or were you always confident that at the end of this you'd get to this point?
Absolutely, because I mean, the reality is the fans, on the fan side, it was financially support the club, pay me back the £2.5 million. That has all been done a long time ago. As I say, we could have done this last year. So no, it was the other half of the bargain that had to go through. I had to sign the shares over to them. So no, I didn't fear that it was ever not going to happen.
How do you feel personally on this day? Obviously it's a massive day for the club, but yourself, you know, have had such an effect on this club. How do you feel going forward? What's your relationship with the club like?
Oh, the relationship's fantastic. I have, to say I've enjoyed every minute of it would clearly not be true, but I have enjoyed the majority of it. I love the staff, the supporters, everything about it is great. Even when you get criticised, you know, the one thing I can't do is put on a pair of football boots, and you know I can't help that. But in every other regard, it's been fantastic.
How do you feel your legacy will be at the club then since your ownership?
I don't really know, to be frank. I mean, I hope it will be very positive, unlike some of the previous chairmen and owners that have gone in the past. I think when people look around and see what we've achieved, I think that will be it. We're better than we were when I took over.
Yeah.
That was my objective.
How much pride do you take from that?
Great deal, a great deal. I still remember the old stand, I still remember the state of the pitch, I still remember so many different things. So to be able to stand here today, knowing that we've achieved all of this, we've still got things to do, and we've done it with the support of the fans, you know, and we're financially stable for the foreseeable future. So I'm delighted.
What do you think the club will look like then in 10 years, 20 years? Obviously, you're
Oh, good
looking at long
heavens.
term.
Good heavens. Does anybody know? I'd like to think that we were still performing well at the top of whatever is then Scottish football, and as everybody knows, playing in Europe regularly, all these sorts of things. All the dreams all fans have.
A lot of exciting times though for the fans then.
Great times ahead. Great times ahead.
Do you look at the holiday home now, or what's in it after you now? Do you take a slight break?
I will take a slight break, sorry.
It's not that emotional, surely.
It's not emotional for me, it's just my contact lenses. No, I will have a wee break. It has been a lot of effort to get to this point, for a lot of people, by the way, not necessarily me. So yeah, I'll have a wee holiday and then back to the drawing board.
Next up, we spoke to Andrew Mckinley, who addressed the media. A bit more expansive on perhaps stuff on the pitch at Hearts in terms of strategic partnerships and why they perhaps aren't for Hearts, as well as the general day-to-day running of Hearts, what that's going to look like and what powers the fans will have at the Tynecastle club and what decisions they can make. Because it's not quite as simple as Hearts fans are now making the day-to-day decisions. There is a lot more to it than that, as Andrew Mckinley explains.
Absolutely, it's a fantastic day for the club. The culmination, effectively, of 7 years since Anne took over the club, and for it to now move to the fan ownership is just fantastic.
What does it mean for the future of the club if you're looking ahead?
Well, it gives us stability. We're quite clear as to who our owners are, but from a day-to-day basis, it remains as is. As the chief executive, I report into the board, and the board has a strong representation from the foundation, from the fans. So, I've worked closely with them since I've come in, and I'm expecting to remain working closely with the fans and with the other stakeholders. So it's just great to have this and to have the biggest fan-owned club in the UK.
Do you think fans will want to feel like they are even more involved in how things are run
I'm sure they will, and we already speak to the fan group, listen to the fans, and discuss matters with them to make sure that they do feel involved. There are obviously a number of areas where these reserve matters, where we would never want to do these things anyway. But should we or someone in the future decide they wanted to leave Tynecastle or change the colour of the strip or these sorts of things, those are all reserve matters to the fans, and quite rightly so. But yeah, the general day-to-day, as you'd expect, we've got a strong executive, we've got a strong board, and we will remain running the club.
It's been a long wait, hasn't it, for this to happen, and COVID has put that off.
It has. I think the expectation was it would have happened maybe last year or before that, but yes, COVID, as with many things, has delayed life for a lot of us. So, but it's great to have got to this stage now and to be able to put it into effect. So it's fantastic.
Speaking to you at a time when the team are obviously joint top of the Scottish Premiership, I mean, obviously a lot of positive things happening off the pitch. How important is it that it's now replicated on the pitch?
Well, it's always, you work in football, and anyone that works in football knows that you can do a load of great things off the pitch, but if it's not happening on the pitch, then people won't be happy. So everything we do here is to give ourselves the best opportunity on the pitch, and we're very pleased with the way we've started the season. I was asked a lot of questions about what happens if you start badly, and I always said I don't think we will start badly. I was always confident we'd start well, and yeah, we have started well, and I think the team is really starting to take shape and looks good.
Have you seen a lot of changes within the club over the past year that have got you to this point where you can now go and compete at the top end of the Premiership?
Yeah, there have been a lot of changes. Just round about the same time I came in, Robbie came back to the club, then myself and Anne brought in Joe as a sporting director. We've made changes in the whole recruitment area, and I think hopefully fans are starting to see that by the players we're bringing in. Our mantra during this transfer window has been quality, not quantity. Now it's easy to say that, but I think that is now being borne out by, hopefully the fans will agree with us, that the players we're bringing in are adding quality to the squad and not just making up the numbers.
How big an addition has Joe been?
Excellent. I work very, very closely with Joe, speak to him at least once every day, and he's been great for us. And the guys he's brought in as well to help him with the recruitment side especially have all hit the ground running, and have been really, really good.
Seems to be a lot of long-term contracts as well being handed out to players and stuff. It's not just a team that's going to be here for a season. You've got the same faces 2 or 3 years down the line.
Yeah, well, we're trying that as much as possible. You'll have seen we do have a few loans, and that market is important to us as well. The great thing with loans is, with some of those, if they go well, you might turn them into permanents. Having said that, if you look at some of the loans we're picking up at the moment, these are players that are with top English clubs, and maybe just haven't quite made it. But these are clubs, Liverpool. We're looking at others as well. A player from Brighton. We've now brought someone in from Bristol City. These are big clubs, and I think we would like to have some of these guys here longer than just their loans. But you're right. One of the other things you'll notice is a lot of them are much younger players, which is really important to us as well for the future. So it's getting that balance right between permanence, people that you might be able to sell on at some point in the future, and some good loans. And then of course the other thing we all want to do, and all clubs want to do, is to bring through guys from the academy, because that's what all fans want to see as well.
Well, not a strategic partnership with these type of clubs, is it? Trying to build relationships so that if Benwood does well, for example, you perhaps get another one coming through.
It's absolutely all about, as you say, it's more informal relationships. I think the whole problem, if you do go into a strategic relationship with a club, is sometimes that might be viewed as then other clubs might not want to do. So always be careful about these sorts of things. That's not to say we wouldn't ever do it. But as everyone knows, our friends across the city entered into a strategic partnership with Brighton, and we've got Alex Cochrane here. So I'm quite happy that we've got Alex, and I hope he's here for the longer term as well.
Fan ownership's a very interesting idea. It's starting to take a lot of clubs by storm up here. Part of Thistle, Motherwell, St Mirren are all getting involved. How do you think it'll operate at a club of this size?
Well, you're right. It's the first club of this size to do it, and actually, I'm not sure you could do it at a club like this if you didn't have the number of fans involved in it. And a few people have been asking us, could they have the same model at their club? And I think every club's got to look at it for their own set of circumstances. There's well over 8,000 pledgers for the foundation. That's a lot of fans, and I think the model we've got here does work well and will continue to work well in the future. As I say, you hear clubs being wary of having fans on their boards, and every member of our board's a fan, but we've had 2 foundation members of the board for long before I was here, and that's been great. And I've got no issues with that, and the relationship with the fans is good.
Do you think it'll set a model that other clubs will want to emulate?
I think some of them will look at it. As I say, I think you probably have to be a certain size of club to do it. But we do know of other clubs that are. I know this morning that fans groups at Newcastle, in particular, have congratulated us on it and are looking at it. And I definitely think it is a model that fans of a certain size or clubs of a certain size can use.
And it's obviously a model that is still foreign to a lot of people who are used to other sorts of ownership. What would that actually look like when people say fans are involved in it, for those who don't know?
Well, the big thing is that the fan own, as I talked about earlier on, is to make sure that, to me, that the club doesn't do anything that takes away from the culture and the lifeblood of the club. The actual running of it on a day-to-day basis, you can't really have the fans doing that for obvious reasons, but we are all of us are accountable to the fans and always will be for how we do that. So, we're custodians, the fans will be here long after some of us aren't here, and it's really important that we always remember that. So, the fan involvement is something that, to me, even if it's not fan owned, I would always make sure that I was paying attention to what the fans were saying. Obviously, they're our main blood life. This club is about the fans.
How do you find that, the sort of pressure from the fans, obviously, because it can get quite feisty in here when things are not going well?
It can, and last season, okay, the fans weren't in, but there's no doubt we were. There was no more than a couple of weeks, but there was a couple of weeks where fans weren't very happy. But as I've said to others, the job of the board and my job is to make sure I don't get too high. So I don't get too high at the moment when we're up at the top of the league, and I don't get too low if things don't go wrong. I just have to keep a level head, whereas the role of a fan is to be a fan and be a fanatic. And I'd be worried if they didn't have the passion that they have here. That would concern me more if it became an apathy. As long as they keep that passion, then that's great. And it's my job and the others to take the rough with the smooth.
How long is it going to take for fans to realise it's actually quite difficult to run a football club?
Well, it depends whether, but given that they won't actually be running it, it's probably not something that they have to worry too much about. I mean, if they were actually running it on a day-to-day basis, then they would realise it's not as straightforward as you think. But hopefully they are happy with the way it's being run at the moment, by those of us that are running it, and are happy to let us get on with that for their benefit.
And finally, with Stewart Wallace, the man who is leading the foundation of Hearts just now, a born and bred Hearts fan himself, helped by legends of the club to get to this point. As you can imagine, an emotional day for him when 2014 came about and helped him save the club. This day might have seemed a bit far off, but it has came and gone now, and Hearts can look forward to a really bright future under their own ownership. So Stewart Wallace taking us through a bit of that journey.
When I can, in between signing papers and such like this morning and making sure money had moved, and it was, I said, are we allowed to get emotional this afternoon when we're being interviewed? We actually, as a foundation board, we saw the main video that's been put out today by the club for the first time on Friday, and I had the unfortunate task of being the first one to talk after it, because I had to bring everybody back into the meeting, people in the room in tears and whatnot. So yeah, it's a big day, it's an emotional day.
Fan ownership, but fans won't run the club, and there's an important distinction, isn't there?
There is. We've always said fan owned, not fan run. The executive here, do an incredible job. I was saying inside that when I first got involved, you sit in the stand, you think you know how football works, and all of a sudden when you get involved, you realise you don't know very much about it. So I'm very happy that people that understand the game get on with running the club. We've kept 4 reserved matters for the fans, so there's 4 big decisions that, if they were ever to come up, would be returned to the Foundation of Hearts members as part of our governance model. Things like name of the football club, colours of the football club, staying here at Tynecastle, and if the prospect ever came up of disposing of any part of the shares. So there's big decisions there they can be part of, but the routine day-to-day, absolutely with the club.
Does this arrangement secure the future of the club, and how does it do that?
I think it does. I mean, we always said this was about securing the long-term interests of the Hearts supporters. We've become a plaything of an overseas owner. We never want that to happen again. How does it secure it? I think we view ourselves as being the custodians of the shareholding in Hearts, so it will only ever be a decision that's reached Foundation Board and Football Club Board together, with consultation with the fans on those big matters, if there's ever to be a change. Otherwise, we think we've got a great model in place that gives the best chance possible of things working going forward.
Can I just ask you about some of the former players that were involved in this process? Obviously, like Sir Gary Mackay and Donald Ford have been name-checked. Were those two the main ones that were involved?
Yeah, Donald was my first ever hero at Hearts. I got to meet him through some of this, and he was pivotal. He was one of the original 5. Gary Mackay played a huge role, so Gary knew Anne Budge through history, and it was Gary must take the credit for bringing Anne to the first meeting and persuading her that it was a conversation worth having with the supporters group, that we could do something in the long term. I'm sure there's been others, but those guys were the two main players.
Gary, obviously, you allude to Donald being your hero, but Gary, obviously, the record appearance holder. It's quite fitting that he's played such a big part in all this.
Completely. Gary and I are the same age. He's a better footballer than me, obviously, but yeah, I've spent my formative years as a sort of teenager and into my 20s following that great team in the 80s that Gary was such a big part of. But you're right, you know, he's got so many appearances here, and the fact that he was able to play such a big part in bringing Anne to the table, without either of them, this would not have happened.
That's 3 Premiership clubs now, fan-owned in Scotland. What are the sort of benefits, if you will, to fan ownership than perhaps your traditional route that you see?
I think it's got to be one of engagement. So certainly I would like to think that our supporters through Foundation of Hearts feel very, very engaged with the club. I think there is, you know, if you're talking about benefits, you're saying that long-term certainty as well. We try to operate against a very tight model of how we run financially, so that it's always for the long-term interest of the fans and keeping the club as stable as possible. I think you maybe seen some examples elsewhere and here when the owners are chasing something that's unlikely to happen, it just puts the club in real danger. We hope we never go back to that model.
Are you expecting the phone calls? I think like Newcastle supporters group this morning was speaking about an inspiration and things like that now that these are the biggest fan-owned club, picking up the phone to others.
Yeah, we already get those phone calls, to be honest. So we know the guys that you mentioned, the other Scottish clubs. We know the guys at the Welsh Society well. We know the guys at Smythe at St Mun very well. Newcastle United Supporters Trust have been here to talk to us about how they'd like to go on their journey. There's other clubs, Darlington, Northampton Town have been in touch. So yeah, we get quite regular contact, just saying, how have you pulled this off? How did you make this happen? We're inspired by it. I always say we've got what I hope is a great model. It's not the only model. The other models have worked equally well. But yeah, hopefully it is inspirational to fans who, at a time when they maybe see their club in a dark place, think there's another way.
What do you think has happened in British football that's pushed so many people to start calling for fan ownership?
Gosh, what's happened? I guess there's maybe just a feeling that where you do have that overseas ownership, and I can only go by the example here, it's felt slightly detached. Yeah, you know, there was probably, when you look back on it, some interest in some great times during that regime, but you always had that worry that, was it a short-term game? Or was there really a long-term plan for the club? Was there real engagement in trying to bring the fans around the club with the fan involvement? I'm not convinced that was really happening, so I think there's maybe that happening, but fans looking to have a bit of a voice. You see this all throughout football, even in the English Premiership. You're seeing fan groups saying we need some sort of voice where there are overseas owners, so that we know that the interest of the fan is protected. I think that's what it's been about.
And this is about long-term gain.
This is about long-term gain. This is about sustainability. This is making sure we operate on a model which suits the long-term direction of the club, but making sure we build a foundation from which we can be as successful as possible.
So that's all we've got time for on this video. Big well done, I suppose, to the Hearts fans and everybody who has made this ownership transition happen. It has been a lot of work to get to this point over several years, and now the club look to be in a really great position. The years of financial uncertainty and things like that look to be behind them as well. So great to see one of Scottish football's pillar clubs, if you will, in such good health, and good health for the coming years as well. On the part, we've got a really building squad. Sporting director Joe Savage has brought in a lot of good players. Manager Robbie Nielsen came under a bit of stick last season. Seems to have started the Premiership campaign really well, and seemed to have brought over a bit of the support perhaps lost last season. So good things happening on and off the pitch at Tynecastle. But we hope you have enjoyed this video. Do remember to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It would be much appreciated. We'll be back on Sunday morning, I think, with a reaction to Scotland v Moldova. And on Saturday as well, I think, still ironing it out, but we should have something for Dundee fans as well. So if you are a Dundee fan watching this, please do subscribe to the channel and make sure notification bells are on for that. Or if you're just interested in how Scottish football deadline day works, it is fairly interesting. Well, That's all we have time for this. What we have enjoyed doing it. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and until next time, take it easy.